Hello everyone and welcome to the patch rundown for Star Wars Ascendancy version 1.1.5. Today we're just going to be going over some of the changes that were made in this version, as well as some of the changes that are coming up in the 1.2 update, which is our next version. So this is mostly a patch that is centered around balance and the addition of the Veterancy feature. So the first thing that we will cover there is the Veterancy feature. So, for any of your frigates and cruisers, which used to not be able to gain any sort of benefit from surviving battles, now you will be able to use them in battles, and based on how many ships they're involved in killing, they have a chance to increase their own stats. So this is a buff that can stack 10 times, and it can grant up to 100% increased damage for any frigate or cruiser, and 50% damage reduction. So if a unit is able to survive a lot of battles and kill a lot of enemy units, it will become significantly better. This gives a much bigger benefit to players who are able to keep their fleets alive rather than just trying to throw walls of ships at the enemy and hoping for the best, and then trying to replace their losses. There's now a much bigger benefit to managing your ships a bit better and keeping them alive, which also does act as a slightly indirect buff to the New Republic and Empire of the Hand, who tend to benefit a bit more from that kind of thing, or who tend to play around that kind of thing a bit more, whereas the Imperial Remnant and the Pentastar alignment are more okay with losing some of their ships. So that should help some of the weakness that the that the Empire of the Hand and the New Republic had a bit later on in games. So the other thing is just more of a quality of life change. So it's not an actual change to the way the mechanic works, but we have displayed the upkeep cost for ships on the unit cards. So, whereas before there was no real indication, it was just like you can assume that the better ships are costing you more. We have the little credits earned per second thing down there, so the Nebula class Star Destroyer is costing you 0.3 credits per second. Well, there has been a slight change to the mechanic in that now the upkeep ticks every 5 seconds for any given ship. The net cost is the same, it's just that it works slightly better for the AI and for performance reasons if we just have the amount increased a bit and then make it every 5 seconds instead of having it be the actual amount per second. For the display purposes, it just that's what the buff sets it up as. One quick note though is that the credits earned per second title card thing there is not tied directly to the number, so there will be some slight rounding on some things, which we can't really change, but it should still be a lot more useful information. It's very close regardless. It's just if something is 0.05, it'll display as 0.1, which we'll try to keep those noted somewhere, but it should be a lot more useful for, at a glance, knowing what your upkeep is costing you. Looks like we're going to get stuff, so let's pause there again. So the other major changes have mostly been around balance for the Pentastar alignment. So it was a faction that had a few too many exploitable things, and there were a few techs that weren't working quite as we had intended. So the first one is the supply lines tech, which we will go find here. Yes. So these techs allow the Pentastar alignment to resupply themselves passively, which is something that no other faction can do because they're more based around their strike craft. The problem was that the number that they were getting up to was way too high, or it was up by a factor of 100, I think. So we've brought that back into line with what it's supposed to be, because before they were, I think, regenerating a squadron every minute or so, which was effectively in a battle the same as not having to worry about supply at all. So now it's significantly longer, but they still should be able to get something out of it. It's a number that we're probably going to have to adjust a bit more as patches go on, but that tech has also been added to the Thrawn and Pelion line. If you look in the patch notes there on the screen, the supply lines tech is available to Thrawn and Pelion, so they should be able to passively regenerate a little bit of supply as well. The next changes are to the Venator. So they were pretty oppressive in the 1.1.1 build. So their slot count has been increased, which means they're costing a little bit more fleet supply. They are their ability was nerfed, so the SPMAT beam the cooldown was increased from 40 seconds to 120 seconds, because that was essentially letting them wipe out any anti-fighter units. And also, anti-fighter units have been made a little bit more effective by giving them an AoE burst ability that lets them take out groups of strike craft around them pretty much immediately. So all this should bring the Pentastar alignment a little bit more in line with the other factions. The other faction that was a little bit straying away from the group was the Empire of the Hand, and for that we've mostly left them unchanged, but we did give the Syndic and the Phalanx a little bit of a health boost. The Syndic specifically to help with some of the early game against militia, helping them be a bit more survivable. It's about a 600 health difference effectively between the shield and health. It was brought from 4,500 to 4,800. So that should help them be a little bit more survivable in the early game, and help especially newer players get through some of the more micro-intensive needs of the Empire of the Hand and get to the point where they're a bit stronger. The next significant change was to escape pods. So the New Republic has a mechanic where their degrading systems also includes a mechanic for when they're about to die, they jettison escape pods, which can then be redocked with ships in order to gain a few credits and a bit of health. So in previous versions it was just not really noticeable, so we've significantly increased the effect of all of that. Let's see, what's the number there? So yeah, you're getting 100 credits instead of 50, which is a fair amount, and the hull heal is from 250 up to about 450, and it also adds 2 squadrons worth of fighter supply to the ships. So that should be a lot more noticeable. I think there was also some changes to actually casting the ability, so it should be a bit more easy to actually get those effects in place as well. So this should help the New Republic a little bit in later games as well. The next thing that happened with the New Republic is we fixed some of their access to some tech. So I'm just gonna swap over to the New Republic there. Where is it? Change player, change race. There we go. New Republic. I'm really glad the Hapens weren't next in line, because then it would have crashed, I think. Where is it? Diplomacy. Okay, so these techs here, I believe it was these two. Coalition Builders and Unifying Force were there in the last build, but their prerequisite techs were not. They were displaying under other tech, which means they weren't reachable. So now you should be able to get Democratic Peace, Arbitrate Tariff, Coalition Builders, and Unifying Force. So there's a few effectively new techs for them in the Diplomacy tree. And I think that's most of the changes to the New Republic. Oh, one that I didn't mention for the Pentastar alignment was that the Secular, which had been underperforming a bit, now does have access to the skip ray once it's researched. So that should help them be a bit more useful, especially with the nerfs to the Venator. And there are a few other little minor changes that have been made. You can see them on the screen, like the skip ray damage nerf, the Imperial Remnant Broadcast Center was... I'm going to regret pressing this again. Okay. So this HoloNet transceiver tech used to be 2 levels for absolutely no reason. It is now fixed back down to 1, and there has been one other fairly significant change to the Imperial Remnant, other than the introduction of the supply lines tech, which I don't think is in here as of when I'm recording this, but it'll be right here, right there, is the Altor has been changed. So I am just gonna...
We have found an apt site for further operations.
Change galaxy, spawn entity, Corey, capital ship, Imperial Remnant,
Altor actual reporting. Maintenance chief here.
So this string not found ability, which is obviously going to be fixed before it's uploaded, is an AoE passive heal. So instead of just having the targeted heal, we've exchanged the Altor's self-destruct ability with an AoE passive heal, and then you also have the tactical targeted heal. We've also increased the range on all of the Altor's abilities. So It should be a bit easier to use this in a more effective way in battles. As it ranks up, it'll get even more effective, and it should also mean that in the time between battles, you are able to more effectively bring up the health of your ships. This is a change that also, I believe, applies to the repair and resupply stations as well for all the factions, so they should be a bit more effective to use. And there's also a change coming in a future version that will give them a few extra effects, the resupply stations.
We have found an apt site for further
so that covers most of the changes to this build. There are a few other little minor fixes that I didn't cover here, but that should be the general gist of what's going on. I'm going to be hosting a multiplayer community match on this Thursday, which is the 7th, I believe. Yeah, so on the 7th at 5 p.m. EST, and then I'd like to have one next weekend as well, but there'll be more details on that in a couple days once I'm sure what I'm doing this weekend. But yeah, so I'll just quickly go down some of the stuff we're working on for the next build as well while we're here. So the main point of the 1.2 build will be to add the Hapes Consortium as the next playable faction. Of course, we will be going over any feedback we get as far as bugs and balance issues that arise from this version, and then we'll try to get those sorted out so that the Hapes will be able to be the main focus for us, and we won't have to worry too much about major changes to the existing factions. But on that note, there will be about 4 to 5 additional texts. That's what we have planned for each of the existing factions. Some of those centered around diplomacy. We're going to be trying to expand on some of those systems a little bit. And using the extra text to just sort of fill any holes that the factions currently have. So definitely keep the feedback coming on the existing 4 factions. We do have the forums at thrawnrevenge.com/forums, and we also have a Discord server that has an Ascendancy channel, which there is a link for in the description. So if you want to talk about that or report any issues you find, report any feedback, we'd be more than happy to hear it.
An apt site for further operations.
So the next thing we want to do for the next version is expand the selection of random events and encounters. For example, I'm not sure if it was in the last version, but there's a center point encounter. We need to give that its ability so it actually does something instead of just being a prop like it is right now. There will be a few updated art assets. So the Lucre Hulk MC80, MC90, MC40A Home 1 are already finished. We'd like to get the MC80B in that as well, and also some of the Empire of the Hand units like the Antigo should be redone by then. Maybe the Ascendancy Star Destroyer as well, and maybe the Psycha and Furion fighters. Actually, the Furion isn't even in yet, but the Psycha will be redone, and then once the Furion is redone, it will be in the mod. Is the Furion in the mod? I'm pretty sure it's not. Hold on. Whatever. I'm assuming it's not. I don't remember somehow. Anyways, we also want to work on some of the militia for the mod. So instead of it just always being Imperials everywhere and Hapens on the Hapen maps, there should be a better mix of them on all the maps. So rather than necessarily strictly speaking or sticking to who should be where, we'll allow for a bit more randomness, and then on some maps we'll stick it a bit more to canon. So you should be able to run into hopefully Yavitha, Imperials, Hapens, maybe some New Republic stuff, maybe some part of the hand stuff, and ideally there will be a few other unique militia we'll be able to get in, but most of our art focus will be on the Hapens for the next build, so there shouldn't be too many other new models, but that'll be something that we're looking to expand on as the versions go on. But the last thing we're going to be working on is the reworked shipbuilding economy, where we have the warehouse feature that we will cover a bit more in the future. That was going to be in this build, but I'm not super comfortable with that being shipped without a lot more testing than we were able to do for this build. I'd rather, especially because this is supposed to be more of a balance patch, something that so significantly changes, or has the potential to so significantly change balance on top of Veteran C, just seemed like a bad idea to put out right now. But that, I think, covers everything I wanted to talk about today, so thanks for watching, everyone. There is a link in the description to the download, which I probably should have said earlier. I'm going to put it on the screen anyways. But either way, thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions, comments, anything, leave them in the comments section, or join the Discord server or our forums and leave them there, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. But I hope you enjoy this version. most of our focus right now is on finishing Imperial Civil War 2.2. However, we thought it was important to get some of these fixes out, or some of these changes out, and get a bit of feedback before we move on into the full 1.2 build. We do want to get the Hapen started, and the work has already started on that a little bit, so we'll start having a bit more news about that coming up. So again, thanks for watching, and see you next time, everyone. Bye.